young co-eds were killed in their sleep, beaten and strangled. 3 others were beaten near death, but they seem to be pulling through.
Police in Pensacola, Florida, are holding under tight security tonight a man they believe may be a suspect in the slaying of 2 Tallahassee co-eds last month. Theodore George Bundy was arrested on Wednesday while driving a stolen car.
There is the realization that no matter where you live or who you are, you can be a victim.
You're scared, it could have been you, it could have been any of us.
Day after day, the handsome and the very glib Bundy helped run his own defense.
What detectives have said is that I might have been his primary victim, that I was chosen, and that he had come and looked through my window.
He just knew that there's this house with all these girls that he had probably walked by many times.
I thought this guy had looked down at me, and I thought it was just a flash. It was just a flash of seeing him, and I thought, nah, it's just my imagination.
It's amazing to me that at this moment, in this room, at this table, we have Bundy's first known survivor and Bundy's last known survivor all together at the same time.
Bundy gained the legacy of being the dreaded Seattle Ted killer from the Pacific Northwest.
You were the first known victim of Ted Bundy.
Yes.
Where were you?
It was January 4th. I was a student at the University of Washington. I was getting ready to go back to school, to winter quarter. Just a normal day.
Do you think Bundy had been stalking you, following you?
Yes, I do, because I remember doing laundry. I saw some guy, an older guy. He was kind of cute, and he would look at me, and he would turn away. I'd look at him, he'd turn away. And I thought, gosh, that's kind of weird. I think he'd been stalking women for a while.
Do you now know the person looking at you in the laundry to be Ted Bundy?
No, I don't know that, no.
Do you think that?
Possibly, yes. Because a few evenings later, I'm in my bedroom reading. And I thought, like a flash, I thought that some guy had looked at me, was looking at me. So I looked back and I thought, no.
Through the window?
Yes, from the window.
That was around 1 a.m.
Right, 1 or 2, right?
What did Bundy do to you?
Well, at first I thought that they took some part of my bed frame and then just smashed my skull in. And then they ran he ran part of it up my vagina and it split my bladder. I know. Can you imagine that?
It's striking me, I wonder if you could have felt it if you'd been awake, just the pure evil, the rage, the anger in the room for a man to have torn, let me understand, tore a piece of the bedpost off and struck you so badly in the head And then to have the idea of ramming a part of a bedpost up you, tearing your bladder.
I'm just grateful every day. I'm grateful every day.
To just be alive.
Yes.
I was working at a department store. I got off in the afternoon, and so my daddy called and asked if I would come and cook dinner for them, and I did. And then I went back to the sorority house because I had projects due. And so Kathy had gone to a wedding, my roommate, and she came in and she was tired. So she wanted to go to sleep, so I was like, oh, I might as well turn off the lights. And so that was probably about maybe 10 or 11. There were a few rooms on the ground floor down in a kind of a hallway that was hidden. Everybody else was on the second floor. And no men were allowed on the second floor unless it was move-in day. That's really why he was noticed, because it wasn't a dorm where there might be a guy walking down the hall and you wouldn't really think anything about it. At that time of night, there shouldn't be any men in the house. And he was seen running down the stairs
By
by a sorority sister, Nita Neary.
what weapon was used?
A log,
A
a
log.
wooden log, yeah. He apparently picked up off of a wood pile somewhere.
What happened to your roommate?
My roommate got hit on the side of the head, so she had her corner of her mouth was slit.
Right.
Her jaw was broken, and the way that it hit, her jaw got unhinged, and she had a gash on her shoulder. And I think I heard that she had some teeth loosened. So.
Were any of the girls in the Coyote house raped?
Lisa.
Tell me your first recollection.
I remember kind of just feeling like I was being carried downstairs. I remember being put into the ambulance, and I asked if Kathy was okay, my roommate. And they said, I remember the person saying something like, she's going to be okay, you need to worry about yourself. We were both okay, but the two of my sorority sisters were killed. And I think if he hadn't seen the lights at the sorority house, I think he would have probably killed us and attacked more girls.
On the 15th day of January in Leon County, Florida, did then and there unlawfully enter or remain in a structure located at 431A Dunwoody, the dwelling of Cheryl Thomas, with the intent to commit the offense of battery therein, and in the course of committing such burglary, the said Theodore Robert Bundy did make an assault upon Cheryl Thomas, contrary to section 1802 of Florida statutes.
We had been rehearsing for Les Sylphies. We already had our costumes, so it was dress rehearsal time. So I had rehearsed all day long, and then I had a date, and it was a first date, and went to a disco. It wasn't Sherrod's next to the Coyote, it was Big Daddy's. And so we danced during the night, and by the time I got home, it might have been around midnight, and I was tired because I'd had a busy day. I remember I had like a peanut butter and honey sandwich, which I loved, and I went to bed.
What time? Do you remember?
Probably midnight.
Did you have a roommate?
I had another dance major, Nancy, that lived next door to me, but we have a total wall in between us, but we did share the same porch, and then she had a roommate named Debbie, but no one lived with me.
Do you remember if you locked your doors? Were your windows locked?
And I remember them asking me, do you dance in front of your window? Well, I'm a dance major, and I'm practicing if it's in my living room. I had the macrame kind of plant that is on the window, so the curtains are open. But there's a house next door, so I never envisioned anybody would be looking through my window. So that we wonder if maybe he had prepared my kitchen window to be able to open it, and I don't hear him opening my kitchen window. As if he had been scoping my house out prior to.
Now, when was your attack in relation to the Caillou attack?
I think was yours around 2 or 3 in the morning, and mine was around 4:30. So that gave him time to come from the Caillou, and I can imagine the rage he must have had inside to continue on to my duplex. For evidence, Ted Bundy had worn a hose over his face with the eye holes cut out and the knot, and had pulled it off and dropped it by my bed, so that they had the hair samples from that to connect him to the Caillou, plus a similar attack. I have some big old chair in my living room. He shoved that under my front door, the door that you walk from the porch. He shoved a chair under there because he didn't want anybody to come in. And so I know that my neighbors heard me sort of moaning, and they heard thumping, and they rang my phone.
About what time was that?
It was probably around 4 o'clock or 4:30, but I didn't answer, and they can hear through the wall, and they hear my phone ringing, but I didn't answer. And they heard sort of running inside the house, so I don't know at that point was he pushing the chair under that front door then, and then they heard running going further back in the house, so it was probably get to the kitchen, jump out the window, and they were so scared, and I'm not answering, they decided to call the police. The police are already at the Caillou house. And so they immediately came and had to break into the front by, pushing the door in and found me laying on the bed.
Days later, I woke up in the hospital.
When you woke up in the hospital, what was your first recollection? What did you see?
I just couldn't believe what happened. I just couldn't
I mean,
believe.
you wake up. Did you even know where you were?
Like, I remember seeing my dad, my father. I saw my roommate. My roommate, it was like he'd been crying. I thought, gosh, this is really bad. Something really bad happened to me.
Were you in pain when you woke up?
No.
You saw your father.
And he was smiling, and he says, I said, Dad, what happened? He says, oh, Karen, you just had a bump in your head. You just had a small bump in your head. Well, it turned out I had
Your dad said you had a bump on your head.
Yeah, it's a little bump on my head, and it turned out to be a huge skull fracture.
What did you later learn had happened that night?
A few days later, the cops came and interviewed me, and they wanted to know if I knew some guy named Ted. And I said no, I didn't know.
How did they already have a name?
Well, because I'd had some inkling. They heard about some guy, Volkswagen Bug or something, or some beige Beetle or something had been roaming around the neighborhood.
What was your physical diagnosis? What did Bundy do to you?
Okay, I had aphasia, which was speech and understanding. I lost 50% of my hearing. I had lost 40% of my vision. I couldn't read the newspaper anymore. I couldn't read my books anymore. I couldn't do anything. Like talking to your friends, talking to your family. I was petrified to talk to anybody on the phone.
Why?
Because I couldn't get a word out of my mouth. I mean, and so you start with the ABC. You just go back to learning ABCs. You just start from there.
Because of Ted Bundy.
I'd been through a lot besides the physical aspects. I mean, it was just trying to get back to normal. I mean, that's what I wanted to do. So I really tried to work hard on getting my speech back, getting my reading back, getting back to normal, getting back to my life, getting back to my friends.
How did it make you, or did it make you take a different life path?
Well, yeah, so I took a different tack for my career. I don't have to speak. You know, I became an accountant. How much do I have to talk?
Before the attack, what did you plan to do?
I was studying to be a lawyer. I think accounting suited me better. So I was just a kid then.
Can I ask you, as life has unfolded, do you think it affected your personality at all, what Bundy did to you?
Yeah.
How?
I'll just trying to overcome. I was pretty confident. You know, like I said, I told you before, my confidence was just shattered.
I remember being in the hospital, and I felt like I was going to throw up. And I asked if, I said I was going to throw up, and I think the nurse who probably I'd asked that question, or I'd said that a bunch of times, but she said, I told you there was a basin next to your head. And I remember turning over and throwing up, and it was blood. And that's the last thing I remember until I woke up. A nurse came in, and it seemed like just minutes later, my mom and dad were there. And my injuries were, I had a skull fracture. Basically, every bone in my face was broken. I had a broken jaw. My front teeth were missing.
Every bone in your face was broken. Every bone in your face was broken.
My teeth were missing.
Your teeth were missing.
My front teeth were missing. And apparently, after the initial hit, I did this. I protected myself, so I had a broken arm and crushed fingers.
Did you go back to the coyote house?
I did.
And you lived there?
I did. But the only reason that was an opportunity for me is my sorority sisters that woke up that night and saw that and lived through that were basically told to pack up and leave. And they moved back. You know, I always felt like once I got out of the hospital, I wasn't a victim anymore. I became a survivor.
I woke up in the hospital, but I was unconscious for 3 days. And then I had amnesia afterwards because of the traumatic injury that I had to my head. My parents are by my bed. I didn't know what had happened.
What were your injuries?
I had multiple skull fractures, and I must have been sleeping on my left side because it was all along here where the skull fracture was so bad it severed the 8th nerve that carries hearing to your brain. So I had total loss of hearing on my left side. And then it broke my jaw, and I had multiple contusions on my left shoulder, and my shoulder was dislocated too. Then I had spinal fluid, cerebral spinal fluid was coming out of both ears, you know, because your brain has been traumatized. So it was all the upper body injuries that I had.
Did you ultimately return to school?
I had to go home to recuperate, and my balance was so bad, and I was bound and determined that I would dance again. So I took the little young ballet classes where I'm the tallest 21-year-old in the class, and these little, you know, 4th graders are in there wondering why on earth this tall girl is in there, gripping hold of the bar. But my audiologist told me that I could make my brain adapt to only having the balance mechanisms on one side. I could adapt. He couldn't guarantee it, but I was going to try. I was going to pick myself off of the floor and get up and try again. And eventually I compensated for the balance problem I had as a loss, as a result of that injury.
Did you go on to dance again?
So I chose to leave FSU and I transferred to Texas Christian University in Fort Worth because I was sort of hoping I'd get it all behind me and I'm going to move on. And I got my bachelor's degree in ballet from TCU. So after I got my bachelor's in ballet, I then went and got my master's at Gallaudet University, the Deaf College in Washington, D.C. And at Gallaudet, I worked with the Deaf Dance Department. And so I was interning there, and while I worked on my master's, I would teach ballet to the deaf students and have an awesome speaker system so that the deaf dancers can hear the rhythm from the floor. Right, exactly. So it was really nice to get to work with them.
Were you afraid your attacker was going to come back to look for you?
I was afraid because they hadn't caught the person, and I didn't know who could have done it, so I did have some fear.
The Tallahassee police tell us they don't have much to go on right now. No hard leads, no suspects. In the meantime, the students at that school are frightened. The girls travel in groups. At night, they make sure there is a male student with them.
How did that manifest?
I think you said you don't have nightmares, and do you ever? Well, occasionally I do. My nightmare is I recognize Bundy in my dream, and there's people all around, but no one knows who he is. And I know who he is. And so, I'm going throughout my dream, and so it's just odd that I would have that dream of knowing who he is and no one else knows, and something's going to happen.
Theodore Robert Bundy, you are charged, indictment, 2 counts burglary and 2 counts murder in the first degree, 3 counts attempted murder in the first degree.
Do you remember walking into the courtroom and seeing him sitting there?
I knew he was there. I was so afraid I was going to trip, or that was my one thought, don't trip, don't trip, don't trip, don't trip, get to the seat. And then on the way out, you know what, I didn't really want to look at him because I didn't want to give him the feeling that he was of any importance to me.
So when you walked in, you didn't even look over at him?
No.
I think I glanced at him for a minute. I just had to glance at him for a minute.
I had to give him a deposition. He was acting as his own attorney at the time, and so he had requested depositions from all of us, actually. And so I had to fly home, back to Tallahassee. I did not want to show him any fear. I didn't want to cry. I didn't want to show any emotion that would give him a satisfaction of thinking that he had done something to me that, impacted my life.
When you first saw him, were you surprised at what he looked like?
What do you expect when there's a person that's done the things that they do and hates women, is trying to destroy women? What do you think they look like? I mean, I don't think you have an idea of what they could look like. And when I saw his picture, I just thought, wow, what could make a person, this person that looked so kind of bland, I couldn't picture him as a monster.
If he had not gotten away in Colorado, not once, but twice, the murders and the rapes that occurred in Florida would never have happened.
I'm still angry about that.
They couldn't piece together quicker that they had a serial killer on the loose.
After escaping from jail in Colorado, where he did face a murder charge, Bundy was indicted in Tallahassee for the Chi Omega sorority murders. It was 1 year ago this week. Bundy issued an eerie prediction.
Mr. Bundy told me that you told him that you were going to get me. He said he was going to get me, okay? You got the indictment. It's all you're going to get.
But this time, Theodore Bundy was wrong. What the state got was 2 death sentences against him.
Recommend that the court impose the sentence of death as authorized by the Florida statute.
It is further ordered that on such scheduled date that you be put to death by a current of electricity sufficient to cause your immediate death, and such current of electricity shall continue to pass through your body until you are dead.
After so many years, Ted Bundy was finally executed.
Witnessing an execution is never a very pleasant experience. It's a very sobering and gut-wrenching experience. But I took a sense of satisfaction in knowing that as the prosecutor of the case that we were finally seeing justice carried out.
Hundreds of onlookers cheered and celebrated as word came that Ted Bundy was finally dead.
How did you feel when you found out Bundy is dead?
I was happy.
I'm happy just saying it.
Yeah. My old college roommate, on that day that he died, I hadn't talked to him for several years, and he gave me a call. And we talked for a while, and I think he was just as affected as I was.
I had just had my second child, and somebody asked me if I was going to wake up and wait for the execution to happen. And I said, if I can sleep right now, I'm going to sleep. And I woke up and turned on the TV and saw that it had happened.
And what did you feel? Relief.
He will never hurt anyone ever again.
Do you remember when you found out Bundy is dead?
I was at work, and I didn't share with people that I was a Bundy survivor, so no one knew around me, but I knew it was happening. And it wasn't a happy feeling. I think it was more of a relief. Sometimes it's easier people to not know that you are a Bundy survivor, because I feel sometimes it affects their outlook of what you're like, or they find out and they look so sad. And I want to just be the Cheryl Thomas they currently know.
Does your family, do your children know you survived Ted Bundy?
They do know, but I felt bad telling them.
Why?
Because it's such a bad story. And I didn't want them to know that their mom had to go through it.
And I asked my daughter not too long ago, because I couldn't really remember how it had come up. And she said it was sometime that I was on the couch and she had put her head down on my lap and she was looking up at me. And the bridge that I had at the time had silver on the back. And she asked me, why are your teeth silver? And I said, a bad man hit me one time and knocked my teeth out, knocked some of my teeth out.
Do your children have any idea? Have they revealed to you that they look at you and think, it's a miracle I had my mom. She survived Ted Bundy.
You know, I kind of hope not.
Yeah.
I hope they just think she was a really good mom. That's what's important to me. I was a good wife, I was a good mom, I was a good friend.
Could you have children?
Yes, I did have children.
How many?
Two boys.
Do they know about Bundy?
They know. They don't ask. I said, answer questions if you want to know, but they just don't want to know. I mean, I'm their mother, Boys kind of put their mother, on a pedestal. So we've never discussed it individually. We've never discussed it. So, but they know.
And of course, your husband knows.
Yes. Yes, my husband knows. My closest friends know. For years, I never told a single soul because I just wanted to be me. I didn't want to be construed as a victim of Ted Bundy. I just wanted to be Karen. You know, I didn't want to define as being a victim forever.
She'd be going to a Valentine's dance next month. She'd probably be married by now. She'd probably have children. This evil man came to our community and took it all away from her.
Lisa was like the funnest friend you ever had. She always had a smile on her face. She was funny. She was just, I don't think I ever saw her upset or, you know, not upbeat. That was just Lisa. And Margaret was the person you wish you were. She was really pretty, very classy. The world is not, it's not a better place for their loss.
Give him the same amount of mercy that he gave Lisa Levy and Margaret both, which was absolutely none.
You ever feel like you're your guardian angel somewhere?
I have sometimes, yeah. I have.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. So when I moved back to sorority house, I lived in Lisa's room. And people said, like, after that, well, didn't you feel weird or didn't you feel? And I was like, no, because I felt like they were like she was watching over me.
And they're not here. They're not here at this table right now because they did not survive Bundy, but you did. Do you ever think about that?
I think about the way that I think about it is I hate to hear his name. I wish that instead we would say the murderer of Linda Ann Healy, the murderer of Lisa Levy, of Georgina Hawkins, you know, and not his name. I do think about them a lot.
I always wonder, were there people before? Were there victims that we still to this day don't know about?
Yeah, I believe there are
Or
other
dead
victims.
bodies.
I believe there are other
I do
victims that we
too.
don't know about.
I do too.
Just before he was executed, serial killer Ted Bundy denied he was responsible for some murders of young women on the Jersey Shore.
Bundy may also be the man who killed 2 girls at the Jersey Shore in 1969.
He's killed a lot more than that, but we'll never know for sure just how many other women he's murdered.
We were just furniture and fixtures to him.
Right. Yeah.
You know, we weren't women. We
He
weren't.
didn't know us.
Yeah. He just wanted
A body.
a body.
You know,
Yeah.
body.
How do you think surviving Bundy has affected your life?
Well, it definitely changed my direction as to, you know, it wasn't going to be the way that I used to think it was going to be. But I believe that in your life, things change as you grow and you learn and you adapt and you move on. So there were many positive things that happened as a result of it, and I just grabbed onto those positive things.
After it happened, you just feel intensely grateful that it isn't your parents that heard that you had died. And, you know, you don't take that for granted anymore. You know that you're lucky. You know that
you have a second chance.
You have a second chance.
And you don't take anything for granted.
No.
Ever.
No. Life is a precious, precious thing.
Just grab at it and go forward.
How does it feel being in the same room, at the same table, together, all of you, within an inch of death with Ted Bundy?
Sort of a sisterhood, I think. There's a thread that we experience that nobody else does.
What do you mean a thread?
We have that in common, that something awful happened and we all moved on with our lives. Part of moving on was He's not going to win this. He is not going to win.